The Financial Eye, where we shine the spotlight on challenges and opportunities that are shaping Uganda's business landscape. Now tonight we are very excited to share a very crucial topic, and that is how public procurement can be a game changer for women, youth, and persons with disabilities. Now, despite the government's initiative of making sure that they give out over 6% of their budget to public procurement, these groups have been grossly underrepresented. However, there is still hope, where they have come up with a reservation scheme of over 15% of public procurement budget being put aside for these groups to benefit. And now tonight, joining me tonight, we have a guest that is the Executive Director of Africa Information of
Freedom of Information
Africa Freedom
of Information Center.
Africa Freedom of Information Center, and that is Mr. Gilbert Sendogwa. He's very welcome to give us just highlights of how this progress or initiative is going to progress, what are the challenges, and of course he'll be also giving us its potential for making sure that all the women in Uganda, the youths, and also the persons of disabilities can benefit from the reservation scheme. You're very welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Jacqueline. Good evening, dear viewers. Thank you for having me here.
We are very excited to have you. Could you just give us just a briefing of what the Africa Freedom of Information Center does in Uganda?
Yes, thank you very much. Africa Freedom of Information Center, or AFIC as we call it, is a Pan-African civil society organization that promotes the right to information and digital rights, transparency and accountability of governments and businesses, climate justice, and the inclusion of women and other marginalized groups. We are a network of 58 civil society organizations from 29 African countries, and we have observer status with the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, and also a partnership with the African Union.
Okay. Could you just also highlight to us what do you mean by the reservation scheme in procurement?
Yes, public procurement is the main vehicle through which governments buy goods and services to provide to citizens.
Okay.
And every year, governments in the region, based on the research that we carried out in Ethiopia, Rwanda, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, governments spend well over 60% of their national budget through public procurement. Now, the problem is that women-owned businesses take less than 1%. Now, our governments and the United Nations in general did commit in 2015 to leave no one behind, to ensure that there is equality. And therefore, public procurement presents an important policy instrument through which gender equality could be achieved.
Okay.
Now, the problem is that when you have the national budget, 60% being spent, but then half of the population, more than half of the population getting less than 1%, then it exacerbates this problem of inequality. And therefore, public procurement reforms becoming an important area that governments should look at as a means to achieve and promote gender equality. Now, following our research and engagements with the governments, let me now talk about the government of Uganda. Government was actually convinced with our evidence and the rationale why this reform was needed. So in 2021, the PPD Act was amended to provide for reservation of contracts for special groups. And in 2024 March, government issued a policy instrument, guidelines for the participation of women, youth, and persons with disabilities.
Okay.
Now, according to this legal framework now, 15% of every procurement budget of a government entity, ministry, department, or agency is reserved for businesses owned by youth, women, and persons with disabilities. The law also requires that in the case of central government ministries and agencies, contracts below 30 million should go to these businesses.
Okay.
And in the case of local governments, contracts below 10 million shillings. So from the policy point of view, government has taken an important step to include women, youth, and persons with disabilities in this, in the economy, if I should say, so they're able to take a fair share of the economy. I was listening to an interview or an interaction between the president and young people this morning, and I saw actually a young journalist who asked the president that youth constitute the largest proportion of the population, and yet they're underrepresented in cabinet. And I think maybe for me, if it were me, I would ask that the president and government in general, puts emphasis on, implementing this transformative policy. Because by doing that, you are sure that, women have access to resources in schools, in hospitals across the country, in government agencies, everywhere. I think if the implementation was taken more seriously, it can change the country in a very, very short time. And I think journalists like you and those that I saw interacting with the president, I think this should be a major important point of discussion, especially recognizing that government has already accepted and put in place the policy framework. What it is needed now is its implementation and enforcement.
Okay, now following your research, you found out that even though the government was expending 60% of its budget on procurement, or the women were taking, women-owned businesses were only taking 1%. What were the primary barriers for this?
Yes, one of the key things that our research found out was that women are interested, they are ready, not ready, but they are eager, they are active. Because according to our research, 38.2% of all registered businesses in Uganda are owned by women. Now the problem is that they do business with the private sector and individuals. And as I've already said, money is with government because the national budget, that's where a lot of spending takes place. So they need to move, to start doing business with the government for their businesses to grow. We found, for example, that of the less than 1% of the women-owned businesses that do business with the government are based in Kampala and Wakiso. Uganda has over 140 districts. So you can see there is a huge challenge there. Okay. We found also that the few women-owned businesses that are participating in government procurement do so in low-value products, like supply of cleaning services, food items, and the rest. Now with this, we found that the profit margins are very low, and therefore businesses don't grow. They don't progress from small, medium to large scale. So there's need to, to enhance their capacities so they can, do like juicy contracts where the profit margins are higher and therefore get better capacity to to do serious business with government. Now, from our research, we found so many barriers,
Okay.
but we categorize them into three categories.
Okay.
The first category is what we termed as legal and policy barriers. With this, you know, the law requires that, of course, to do business with government, you have to be an entity. And to do that, you must have several things. You must be registered in the government supplier database. But to do that, you must have also several other things. You must have trading license. You must have NSSF. You must have URA registration and all sorts of things. And to be able to do this, you also require so many other things.
Okay.
So legal barriers were a big mountain for most of the women entrepreneurs to climb. The second category of barriers is what we termed as operational and capacity barriers. These are on the side of women entrepreneurs. Lack of capacity, you know, to prepare responsive bids. And therefore, when they try, they fail. And when someone tries 3 times, the energy and the incentive for them to try again is lowered.
Okay.
We found challenges around capital, which is also in a way legal, but also capacity.
The capacity to deliver.
In the sense that you are required to prove that you have a certain, you know, amount of capital to undertake certain jobs.
Okay.
So it's a legal requirement on one hand, but also a capacity challenge on the other hand. Then capital to be able to service contracts, like to execute contracts, is also another challenge we found. Also, there was an issue that, which was, I think, part of the law, problem of the law. You know, someone wants to supply, you know, low-priced things, but they are being asked to prove that they have capital of 100 million. So all those were constituting serious barriers on the side of women entrepreneurs. The other challenge was on access to information on government procurement opportunities. Information is not readily available. Advertisements are not in places where women go to. They are in languages that are a barrier to most entrepreneurs. If someone can do good business, and the research found that they're actually doing very good business, even though they could not write English. So they need to modify some of the things is very, very important so that there is no constraint. And the third category of barriers is what we termed as social cultural barriers. The perception that women are not able or capable of doing serious things, especially when it comes to works and services contracts. There was perception that this is work for men, even when clearly there are women entrepreneurs and professionals who, you know, can execute these works. There was also another problem of a significant problem of delayed payments, in the sense that the law requires that if a government contractor, supplier, or provider has done the work and has issued an invoice, and the entity has not, you know, disputed this invoice, then they must be paid by law within 30 days.
Okay.
However, we found instances where women had waited for 4 years and still counting.
Wow.
Without being paid. Now, this is a major challenge because for someone, for example, who has borrowed money to service a contract, this is like a death sentence for their business and also for themselves. They can be overcome, their assets can be sold, and make their situation worse off. So we found this was a major, major challenge. And we also found an issue of corruption. And in the case of women, there were two dimensions, what we called sexualization of contracts. Women were saying that to win contracts, a number of them were being asked to to influence with their bodies, if I may put it like that, and then also to get paid, also to do the same. And particularly so for young women, that's where it was prominent that they were being asked to pay with their bodies, while their adult counterparts were being asked to pay with money, which then becomes a major barrier for women who don't feel that that should be a way to do business. And a number of them said that they had to give up, on doing business with government or on pursuing their legitimate payments for work done. So, on the policy side, to address the policy issues, the government actually was very responsive and has amended the law, put in place regulations, and a number of women are already benefiting from these major policy reforms that the government has undertaken. Investment is needed to raise awareness, to train women, and support them to formalize their businesses, but also more importantly to submit responsive bids. 69% of the enterprises which are doing business with women, with the government, are based in Kampala and Wakiso. So there is need to be more intentional to look at cities and local governments, let's say, at businesses outside Kampala and Wakiso, and make sure that they are on board, so that the law benefits all businesses.
Okay.
Because as it is now, it's a risk that a few enterprises can win here and in every city and in local governments because they know and have capacity, and which then can skew. If you look at the data, you might think it could be that you say, oh, women are winning, are benefiting, but then maybe there are few women who are knowledgeable and have the capacity, and they're bidding in several government entities across the country.
When you are submitting your views, you said you need them to be able to be trained in order to be able to submit responsive bids. What does that mean?
Okay, for a bid to be responsive, it must meet certain criteria that the procuring entity has established. For example, they will say you require this document, that document, that document. You also have to prove that you have done this work with,
Other entities.
This amount of money, worth this amount of money for X number of years and the rest. Now you find that a number of women has this, but then when it comes to, putting it down, they are challenged. We found women who were doing already good business with private entities like MTN and the rest, but then they are not doing the same with the government. So this training and orientation is very crucial to make sure that when they are submitting their bids, they know what is required. Even before submitting bids, which is also another policy challenge that we found, lack of policy monitoring and implementation. for this kind of framework to work, you need gender desegregated data. For example, to go to national water and say, I want to see, you know, the 15% which has gone to these groups. What exact contract, how much value to this youth association or owned business, women PWD owned business. As it is now, and when we did the research, this data is not being gender desegregated. Now, what cannot be measured cannot be improved. There should be no guesses. It should be clear, especially from the regulator, but also to the women, youth and women and PWD entrepreneurs and organizations like ours who do policy monitoring to independently look at this data and be able to say that the level of compliance by this entity is 50%, for example. But without this data being gender desegregated, there is a problem. And I think government should urgently address this challenge in line with our recommendation on that point.
That is well said by Mr. Gilbert Sendogwa, the Executive Director for African Freedom of Information Center, as we continue to unpack the challenges, opportunities, and way forward for the reservation scheme of over 15% of the procurement budget going to the women, youth, and persons with disabilities, business-owned businesses around Uganda. We will continue with this, so stay tuned on Race TV so that you can know the opportunities that the government has put for those specific groups to benefit. Stay tuned.
The Financial Eye, making finance clear.
Welcome back from the commercial break. I'm Jackie LINGLA here on the Financial Eye as we continue to unpack the potential, the challenges and progress of the reservation scheme in procurement, where government is putting aside 15% of the procurement budget to benefit the Ugandans who fall in the category of women, youths and persons with disabilities. Now, I'm not alone in studio. I have the executive director of AFRIC. Is it AFRIC? AFRIC. Yeah, that is African Freedom of Information Center, and he's continuing to expand more about this issue. Now, sir, concerning the reservation scheme, the 15% of the procurement budget, how has this policy been effective in increasing participation of these groups?
Yeah, thank you very much, Jackie, for this very important question. Our experience is that this is a game-changing policy. For example, you might know a business called Bake For Me. The owner is one of the entrepreneurs who had been doing business with the private sector.
Okay.
And so when this reservation scheme started, was among the group of 257 women entrepreneurs whom we trained together with the PPDA. And she went ahead and registered in the government supplier database. And according to her, soon after, she started getting, SMS messages and email messages asking her to send a quote. And in I think it was beginning of 2025 when she shared her experience.
Okay.
She already had won contracts with Bank of Uganda,
Wow.
Ministry of Finance, KCCA, and UECDA.
Wow. Okay.
And she was amazed and actually was encouraging other women to do the same. Another lady also who attended the training, her business was in supply of tents. And quickly after, registering in the government supplier database, she also was asked to submit her quotation to National Housing and Construction Corporation to, they were moving from the premises which I think are currently occupied by Electoral Commission to set up a big tent which was going to work as offices for this national housing. And, she was able to, to do that job. And there were so many other stories like that of women who, by undertaking training and formalizing their businesses, registering in the government database, were able to win quickly. I haven't checked with PPDA lately on this point, but I'm almost certain that, first of all, the number is now much bigger, and that also the value of contracts won by these women entrepreneurs is, I'm sure, much higher now.
Okay.
So this then proves that the lesson we draw from this is that when the policy environment is conducive and the capacities of women entrepreneurs is enhanced, then they are able to take advantage of policy opportunities and advance themselves. And so we already know that the policy now is conducive because of the reservation scheme. What is needed now is for government to invest, government and other stakeholders, donors, development partners, to prioritize investment in building capacities of women entrepreneurs.
Okay, now following the initiative, the reservation scheme initiative, will I call it a policy? What are some of the key challenges the government is facing in its implementation?
Yeah, first of all, just like anyone, when you are buying, you are buying for a particular reason. Let's say you are an employee somewhere, your lunch time is from 1 to 2 p.m. You want to quickly have a snack or, so that you're able to be back in office on time. Now, that is one of the key challenges that is faced by this policy, because for entrepreneurs that are coming up and getting used to this, the confidence is building. The entity, on the other hand, is pressed to deliver services on time. If it is medicine, the provider wants to make sure that his medicine is supplied on time and reaches the health facilities on time, so they can, provide people with services. So one of the challenges that could be faced with the entities is this fear, as we lift women, youth, and persons with disabilities, as patience might be required, to
allow them to
get somewhere.
match
up. On the other hand, there is pressure, to provide services. We have been seeing the president a number of times expressing, frustration. And I think he's right in some instances on this point that about the delays. You say, there is a lot of delays, and therefore gives like directives, let this contract go to this company to cure the delays.
Okay.
But that then takes away from two things, undermines this kind of affirmative policy and the confidence of procuring entities, or maybe the requirement to comply with this law and make sure that they comply with the law in giving these contracts. The other problem with that is that when businesses are winning contracts not through the law but through
corruption?
No, through relationships.
Okay.
Then they are going to invest not in their capacities, but into relationship building. If you meet a minister or a president and it gives you a contract, that's where you're going to invest, because it gives you opportunity to win. And already from our research, we found that the issue of capacity is huge. Lack of capacity is huge. So you want to encourage, people to build their capacities of their firms. Businesses are like a chameleon. Their color tends to be like like the surface against which they are. So when you create a situation where that to win you must know someone, that's what business will give you. On the other hand, when you say that, to win, you must have this, you must have that, you must have that, then they also do that. So to me, I would say that in spite of the short-term pains like delays and lack of confidence that maybe this firm may not deliver this, those pains they bring long-lasting results, because you are sure that what they learn today, and it could be learning through inability to win, or maybe a contract terminated midway. So that lesson, or just being coached and guided, no, this one you have done like this, but you ought to have done it like this, and they take that lesson. Next time they are not going to repeat that mistake. So I'm saying that those short-term pains are necessary and important to bring a good product. Now, some of the other challenges could be around, like I said, policy monitoring. One of the key things that we are recommending is that the Uganda Registration Services Bureau portal, that is business registration portal, to be linked with the PPDA portal, government supplier database, so that, when you're registering a business at Uganda Registration Services Bureau, you indicate the shareholders, you also indicate the gender. So this data can quickly be picked by this portal so that it is easy to say gender desegregation for purposes of monitoring and categorizing who is in for this policy and who should be out. But that has not happened, and it still presents a challenge for policy monitoring and compliance. So I think government needs to do that and do so very quickly. Overall, when people don't comply with the law,
like paying taxes?
No, like ensuring that 15% go to these groups.
Okay.
Like contract bureau, 10 million going to these groups, or 30 million in the case of central government agencies. So when that breach happens once, and it happens the next time, and it happens the next time without consequences, then the culture of impunity, is built. And once that culture is established, it will be difficult to fight. So I would say that compliance needs to be strengthened, and there should be consequences on the accounting officers who don't comply with the law.
Okay.
The other one also is in the law. One of the frustrations of women entrepreneurs is on the issue of payment. And this cuts across the region except in Rwanda from the research which we did. In Kenya, the law also says that people should be paid in time. In their case, within 60 days. Uganda, within 30 days. But in Kenya, we found that some people had been waiting for their payment.
Is that law, does it vary from various entities? Because I've seen where they give an allowance of being paid within 3 months.
No, the law applies across board. That
So people
they should
just
be paid,
extend.
should be paid within 30 days in the case of Uganda.
Okay.
But then you find that, the rule is that people are not going to be, the default is that people are not going to be paid within that period. And there are no consequences. There should be sanctions on the part of accounting officers who don't comply with the law, because the consequence of that is that you have businesses sinking. If an entrepreneur, in this case a woman, has borrowed to finance a contract, maybe at an interest of, 15–20%. So any delays eating into their profit, and that might actually make their situation worse than before they bidded. So I think, that challenge needs to be addressed. It is not an issue of the law, it is an issue of compliance.
Is the government putting anything in action of that? Because giving us the cake without, solving the problem underneath might end up affecting
I think there's also a cultural aspect there, because the law says that, you must be paid within this period. But when you see, when you ask how many firms have gone to court to enforce their right, because once you go to court, then court will make a determination, and then you'll be paid even with interest and some penalties. So, but then you find that people are not doing that. We ask why they are not doing that, and women entrepreneurs cited 2 main reasons.
What are those?
One, they fear that if you go to court, then you'll never do another contract
again
with the government, and that, entities are likely to inform each other, and then they may informally blacklist you and close you out forever.
Okay.
So they swallow that pain. The second challenge they mentioned was that in Uganda, courts are expensive, they are inaccessible, and they delay. So this is in spite of the fact that Uganda set up the commercial court to help, businesses to resolve disputes in a timely manner. So again, I think the courts need to pay attention to this aspect, that cases which go to court and are of a commercial nature should be resolved faster. So that has been a major disincentive for people to use courts as a resolution mechanism to cure this problem.
Okay. What financial options are available for the youths, women, and persons with disabilities to ensure that they participate in these procurement opportunities?
Yeah, first of all, the government has also positively put in some policy measures to, to make it relatively easy compared to the situation before when these reservations came into being. One of the key things is that the registration fee in the government's supplier database, in the case of these entrepreneurs, women, youth, and persons with disabilities, has been lowered from, let's say, 450,000. That is if one is registering for works, services, and supplies, 150 each, to 150 altogether. So that's one of the measures. So women entrepreneurs now, youth and PWD, have some ease to register in the government supplier database at a lower cost. And this is very important, because someone who is registering now, they have not yet started making money. So when you put some relief, it is very welcome and a good incentive for them to, to come forward. The second policy intervention the government has done is on bid security. For most of these works, firms, they have removed the requirement for bid security and simply put a provision for a declaration, bid securing declaration, which means that an entrepreneur will just sign declaring that if they are given opportunity, they're able to mobilize resources, to finance this contract. And that's important because, a number of financial institutions now, bank institutions, they have contract financing schemes. So if government removes the bid security, like to say that before we give you must prove that you can mobilize the money, but rather to allow you to secure the opportunity or give you the opportunity, and once you have it, you go to the bank and say, I have this opportunity with the government, I need an instrument, I need capital, and they give. I think that is also another major area where government has come in to assist women to deal with the challenge of access to finance. Now, of course, it doesn't take away the issue that most women entrepreneurs don't have capital, because some of the banks require that in addition to that, you must guarantee an asset. You must provide an asset secure. And especially if you have not, your account has not been active, maybe it is your first time or second time you are doing this kind of business. For them to get confidence, they might require that, okay, in addition to this contract, can you give us maybe a land title?
Okay.
Most women, in Uganda, don't have assets in their names. So this becomes a challenge. for a number of them. And maybe that's where maybe government could also come in, to engage with banks to see how the government can guarantee that aspect, in addition to timely payments, so that maybe banks can feel more confident, the risk is lowered, and are able to give, flexible finance and lower the requirements for access.
So how is the government going to make sure that, how is it going to monitor and evaluate the implementation of the 15% reservation policy?
Yeah, first of all,
also, what are the key performance indicators? At the end of the day, how are we going to say that this policy was actually effective after 2 years?
So within the law, they have put clear milestones and thresholds. So if your budget, let's say, is 100 billion, 15% of that should be for this group. So it is a matter of a regulator, checking and say, have you met it or not?
Okay.
But when I was doing a management course many decades ago, I learned that you don't get what you deserve. So like the law now has given these people, they deserve this 15%, 30 million and below, 10 million and below in the case of local governments. But you get what you negotiate. So at the end of the day, it is the right holders, these women, youth, and persons with disabilities, to ensure that, they monitor, they ask the right questions when they are engaging with each of these entities. Say, we want our share that is provided for under the law.
So that means that as business owners, we have to also find out how much a government entity has been given from government.
Yes.
And then find out as youths, what are we benefiting as youths? What's our portion?
Yes, and one of the things they can do is, to ask for their reservation schemes. The law requires that at the beginning of a financial year, every entity should do a procurement plan. And within the plan, they indicate, what they are going to buy, the budget, when they will do it, and in this case also, what is reserved for each of these groups. This data is very, very important. And, accessing a procurement plan and calculating, what is in for each of these groups is very, very important. Okay. But rarely do people, I think, follow up and look at these plans. And it should go beyond the plans also. It should, because the plan is the intention. But then on the performance reports, that means the actual, the actual implementation, they should have access to that. The problem now is that the entities report this to the regulator, PPDA, through email. I would say that it should be required that this information is put on the government procurement portal so that everyone can see and ask the right questions and get reassured that every government entity is complying with the law in terms of this affirmative policy.
Okay, just in about 1 minute, what are the key remarks that you would want the audience out there to know before we close up?
Yeah, first of all, to appreciate the government for being responsive and implementing our recommendations in as far as, making reservation schemes, making policies responsive to this need. But call upon the government to invest in implementation, especially building capacities of women entrepreneurs. Also to call upon women entrepreneurs, but also youth and persons with disabilities, really to take advantage of this policy. They should look at it as an opportunity. Opportunity is there. Someone has to tap it. If they don't, then it keeps looking at them. And maybe, maybe 2, 3, 5 years later, government can say, let's review it. It is not working. Let's take it away.
Okay.
And then that will be a big problem once it is taken away to bring it back. So that is very, very important. But also on the government entities, to prove that they have done everything possible to ensure that women entrepreneurs are ready, they get information, but have just refused to take advantage of these policies to advance themselves.
That is well said by Mr. Gilbert Sendugwa, the Executive Director for African Freedom of Information Center. And of course, if you are a woman, a youth, or a person with disabilities, we already have an opportunity. Don't look for jobs. Increase your capacity. Make sure you're registered. You have all the eligible requirements to bid for these opportunities, because we have over 15% of the procurement budget by government of Uganda ready for us to actually tap into. I've picked a leaf from what he has just mentioned. You do not get what you deserve, but you get what you negotiate for. So find out more information so that you can tap into those funds as we grow together as Uganda. I am Jackie LINGLA.